wanted to honor a couple of different trends that I see in media that are amplified and exemplified by the Netflix series The OA and Sense8. The trends that I see emerging in these shows more than almost any other at a quality of production, a quality of writing and acting and editing that is quite exceptional, is first of all a mythology that is capable of capturing transcendent experiences for a wide number of people. Meaning that, the way that churches in past mythologies were able to capture a sense of meaning and integrate for the viewer, for the public, some sense of what it is to be human and to be moving beyond the current definition of human. A mythology that is relevant, that is relatable. So there's new myth being born. The phenomena of bilocation, whether it's telepathic or virtual, this pattern of splitting consciousness into multiple places, which Sense8 does more than the other because it's weaving together. One way of looking at the Sense8 production is through the lens of a dream, in which all of the characters in the cast are, in their clustering, a macrocosm of the human psyche. In other words, much like Star Trek or Babylon 5 offer windows into the human psyche where we see different personas taken to their archetypal extreme. The Klingon, of course, being a part of each one of us. The captain, the decider, being a part of each one of us. The healer, the nurse, being a part of each one of us. The characters in Sense8 and the OA, in many ways, speak of a conversation going on within the human ego of our time between the sociopathic and the empathic as just one of a number of continuums in dialogue ranging from violence and violation to partnering and collaboration. The sense of plurality, of clusters or of human beings forming something bigger than themselves. The sense of plurality, the sense of diversity. That's coming, you have that tension between muggles and wizards in Harry Potter. You have the Sense8 and the non-Sense8. You have the OA and her ability to reach beyond and to something more than human. So there's a theme of transcendence. And one of the things that I think is one of the things that's present as an undertone is an awareness that, much like many of the Silicon Valley veterans are very familiar with psychedelics, be it in microdosing, be it in performance-enhancing drugs. And the veterans of Silicon Valley and the developers of the graphical interfaces, etc., which in some ways bring the physical technology closer to a representation of psychedelic consciousness, that it's very clear to me that whether it's the editors, the writers, the editors and the writers, the actors, the directors, that there is a blossoming of the kind of insight, the kind of processing of reality that is outside the current cult format, that is suggestive of psychedelic consciousness, that in a certain way, that from the wild chaos of the early psychedelic movement and the repression, the backlash, that there's now a sophisticated partnering between that type of consciousness that is beyond the bounds of rationality, that is beyond the bounds of logic and reason, is pairing to a certain extent with an incredible amount of logic and reason, with an incredible amount of artistic acuity in the production of great art that takes millions of dollars and incredible coordination between a variety of teams. So it's not about the destruction of the system as much of using the technology within the system to transform the view of the paradigm that created the system. So it's a kind of a revolutionary act of the art transforming the artist, so to speak, and the art transforming the audience in a very deep way. Time echoes. We're learning to play with time, past, present, and future, in these dances, much like a psychedelic journey, much like a meditative journey. A quality of depth, revealing the vulnerability of the feminine. Now, there's still a tremendous amount of cultural chauvinism, which elevates masculinity within women as a peak trait. And so there's a fair amount, particularly in Sense8, of convincing the audience that a female can be as sociopathic, as calculating, as violating as a male, that a female can embody the dark side of the masculine as effectively as men, and I think there's no doubt about that. We're still moving towards, I think, a reality where femininity in men and in women can be embraced in and of itself without the garnish or without the dressing of saying, and the girl can kick and lie and kill, etc., as well as any man, is kind of the vetting of femininity, that femininity, the tenderness, the love, the bond can be kind of parallel with that, that extreme end of the sociopathic masculine. But I think that's part of the evolutionary process of moving out of chauvinism, is to first understand that women can be as cruelly masculine as any man, but men and women can also be incredibly beautifully feminine, and that femininity has its own value. But there's a depth of emotionality in these shows that reveal the depth of our humanity. And finally, there's a number of shows that are bridging the gap between virtual reality and present-day reality. Bringing parts of fiction into fact and weaving more narratives together. For example, in Sense8, you'll find some of the conspiracy theory evidence around 9/11, and so there's kind of a touching between the fictitious world and the world in the movie and our world, as characters have more real conversations about the thoughts and literature, etc., that we're digesting than we're having with our friends, in that sense, making the media experience more meaningful than many of the literal conversations those of us watching the films might be having with a partner that evening. And so that dance, where the film can become more real than the outer reality that is too plastic in the facade of political correctness, to touch each of us as thoroughly, perhaps, as a fiction that is more real than reality, and also preparing the human brain for this merging with virtual reality. Within 20 years, we will be able to travel within the probability field of what it is to be human and literally live people's different lives and understand things through their eyes in a way that I think can bridge empathy, that can lead to empathy with characters that are on the opposite side of the spectrum. And I think that's played with Sense8 as well, as as the Indian goody two-shoes woman finds her dark side with Wolfgang, and Wolfgang finds his light side in fighting for the feminine. There's just a lot of depth in as we're moving towards what I would call a super reality, a reality where within the chaos of data points and the human experience within the chaos, we can connect and see patterns that become visible through another person's eyes that we didn't see through our own eyes, and in a certain way transcend the gap of individuality to be able to empathize and understand. And I really like the way that Sense8 brings a cluster together from around the world as a little bit of a metaphor for finding all the different parts within ourselves. So I highly recommend these two media programs by Netflix. At least they're on Netflix, and I think Netflix is involved in the production. And I'm excited to see where we're going. And I'm excited to see how this type of media, which is more dimensional and thus more engaging, gradually grows within the field of independent media. And I think that with time, as people get a taste of this, and then go back to the mediocrity of evening television and get another taste of this from a slightly different angle, that the compelling draw to this type of product is its dimensionality, is its depth, is its range, is its intelligence that invites the viewer into a more dimensional sense of consciousness than they would otherwise have. Enjoy.